Hey, what is up, everyone? Today I wanted to bring you 6 tips for Fellowship that I think will make you just an incredibly better player. If you're relatively new to games like this, or if you haven't played too much Mythic Plus and WoW, these are going to be things that you've probably never heard of that are actually going to be very beneficial for you. And I can give you some knowledge from that game. Or maybe if you just haven't really climbed too much in WoW, I think that I have things that are relevant for everybody who are watching this video. Hopefully you can learn a thing. And yeah, let's make it useful for you. So starting out with the first one, I had to load in the game right here, and we're actually going to be talking about your heads-up display and what you can modify here. So if you guys haven't looked at this too much, if you're just using the base UI, the base UI isn't bad, but there are some optimizations that I think that you can make. So you'll notice my UI right here. I think that it's pretty standard. I have the debuffs like player profile and stuff. I put my important hero buffs over here on the right, just so I can monitor them right next to my toughness. But I think the big thing that I've modified here, if you look, is actually my boss timers. It says boss timer short cooldowns here, and then the boss timer long cooldowns here. So if you're familiar with WoW, basically the way that this will work with like something like Bigwigs is the boss timers will oftentimes appear on the right. But what we want is we want the boss timers for things that are about to happen to appear right in front of me. And this is really helpful for me as a tank, especially because now I'm gonna know if like a tank buster is about to hit me. I don't have to like look over at the right side of the screen. So I'm going to show you actually what this looks like within the game right here, but I think that like this is a night and day difference. So for example, right here, this is going to be us pulling the first boss in Ransack, I think it's called. And you'll notice my boss timers right here. So Frostbite is going to be the tank buster that's coming in 2 seconds, and this is really helpful. You'll see the Blazing Slam goes out, and then he's going to Frostbite me, and I can time, hopefully, defensive for it. I don't even think I did, but it's nice to be able to look down here rather than having to divert my eyes over here. I think there might be a little bit of clipping on here with the toughness meter, but you know, it doesn't bother me too much. But if you're particular about those sorts of things, it can be kind of weird to get it to like in the exact spot because you notice that like it's not as big as you might show. So I don't know. It might take you a little bit of tweaking to get it exactly how you want it. But this is how I generally prefer my stuff. I think that it's a pretty clean layout. I think it works pretty well. So definitely something I recommend. I think you can also make your health bars vertical, which is something that a lot of people like. So if we go into Fellowship, I haven't done this before, but edit HUD, health your unit frames. Yeah, so you can do grow direction. So like say for example, I wanted it up here. You could do expanding up, and now I don't think that there's a way that I can necessarily show it, but now it'll go top down instead of going across. I've always kind of just played with them below my bars, but this is also something that works really well, especially for a game like Fellowship where there's not too many people on your screen. For right now, I'm going to keep them on the bottom, though. That's just where I like them. And all this at the end of the day is personal preference. There is one thing. So buff placement, I want that on top still, but there wasn't enough room. So I can like tweak things like that. I've never seen the system performance, combat stuff. I would just recommend going through this and just like messing with stuff. If you want your extra ability bar, or, I don't know, any of this stuff, then it's probably helpful. It does look like I can export my profile, so I'm actually going to do that. I'll put it in the description if anybody wants to copy it. But yes, I think that this is super important. Find something that works for you. All right, the next thing that I wanted to talk about, and I just think that this is super interesting as a new mechanic that exists within Fellowship that doesn't exactly exist in a game like WoW, which is what I played, which is going to be the shrouds and the chicken mechanic. So I think that this mechanic is really cool because basically, if you know anything about like dungeon type games like this, the packs that you pull are they can be scarier depending on what mobs are in them. But generally, there's only like 1 or 2 mobs that are normally scary within a pack, and everything else is kind of just like there, right? So for example, something like this Reaver right here that you see in this pack. The Reaver is really scary for the tank. It does a lot of damage. He does have a cast that can kind of enrage things, and he also has another cast that does like a big frontal that's really annoying. Just an annoying mob to fight. It's also very healthy. Like, it just has a lot of health. So this pack itself it doesn't feel particularly efficient for me to fight when I'm pulling through here. So what I do is you'll notice I actually chicken it, and then I pulled that pack before it. I grab these 2 arsonists. I'm going to grab these slavers down here, and I'm not sure if I actually even keep going right here. Do I stay right here? Okay, I stay, and I keep this pack. But you're noticing now I took what would have been probably a 2 mob or like a 2 pull pack, and I turned it into like a 3 pack. So right here, like I don't think I probably could have taken much more than like these 4 and like maybe this dude, and then like maybe I could have tried to grab those arsonists with it, but it gets like really scary when you have that many mobs in the group, along with that big guy. But because I chicken this, I'm able to pull even more, and it ends up working out fine. We kill the pack and we move on. Right. So this is where these like chickens can be like super nice because you can basically just take like a pack that's pretty scary and then you can make it like a nothing pack, but you can still get some percentage from it, right? Because you deleted that one scary mob, now it becomes so much more manageable, and that means that you can chain it with something else and basically make it so that pack that you are pulling now just has a little bit of additional percentage on it. So that could be pretty cool. The other thing with shrouds too is that like if there's a pack that you really don't want to fight later in the dungeon, you can definitely use that to skip it. So we don't actually have a shroud, but we have a portal that we end up using later in the dungeon. We were kind of messing around with it. This isn't like a planned route or anything, but you're gonna see that we actually do use this portal to like skip one of the annoying shadow dudes at the end of this ransack. So we pull through this dude, we kill him. We kill those guys, and then we actually have a shroud right here actually. So maybe we do use the shroud, and we just walk through. And it's nice to we don't have to kill this mob. Also, funny thing about this mob, a really annoying mob to fight, it's only worth like 2%. So it's like, okay, do we want to spend all this time killing this mob that's worth 2%? Or can we just shroud past it and ignore it? There's a couple of other packs and like dungeons that I think are super annoying that I would recommend shroud skipping. So you can actually plan routes on this Fellowship website too for Method. Method has done a great job with the launch of this game. I think I'm just providing like tools for you to use. So for example, if we go into Sailor's Abyss right here, there is a pack that is so annoying in this one. So if you go to the left, you go all the way to the end, it's right here. It has this Corsair, it has another Corsair, and then it has a Water Elemental. This is a pack where like these Corsairs do a lot of damage, and the Water Elementals will also bolt people if they're outside of melee. So this pack becomes increasingly frustrating because these Corsairs kind of need to be kited by the tank a little bit. They put a stacking bleed on the tank, and the tank can drop it by walking away from them. They don't walk very fast. But if the tank is kiting, then this water elemental will be leaving melee range from the other people in your group, and it'll start to bolt them, which can be deadly, and you don't really want to deal with that. So something that you could do is, although it is worth a decent amount of percentage, so it's like 8% between the two Corsairs and then 2% with the water rally, you can just shroud past it, and you can just pull a little bit more later. So instead of pulling these guys, I might choose to pull a couple of these raiders. That's what I do. What is 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, so that's a 4.5%, and then you get a couple of these lashers who are worth like 1% each pretty much. So you end up with like basically like the same amount of percentage, maybe a little bit less, but you're fighting such like an insanely easier pack. Like it's so much easier to kill these 3 raiders and these 3 lashers than it is to kill these 3 dudes that you basically have to pull alone. So you notice how like these chickens and these shrouds can be like super beneficial in these situations, and if you get them, I would definitely recommend trying to find uses for them. Now, if your tank doesn't have a use for them, then it become kind of iffy. But if you are the tank in your group, I would plan your routes around these things, honestly. I bring a chicken to pretty much every dungeon right now, and just because it is so valuable. Not only that, but you can actually use it for other really creative uses. So keep in mind, this chicken works on pretty much like any mob in the game. It can be a boss mob. It can be the mini bosses. It can be like these dudes in the ads that they spawn. So you're going to notice right here, this corrupted totemic. He actually spawns his pillar, his totem right here, and I just chicken it, which sounds goofy. Like it sounds like some people are like, maybe why would you chicken like not even a real mob? Like that mob's not even worth percentage, so why would you chicken it? But the funny thing is that the totemic is worth a decent amount of percentage, and the totemic also doesn't he doesn't really do anything other than spawn these totems. Like he has another cast, and he has a shadow lob that you can kick, right? But if we can pull him, and then we can just make the thing that is scary about him, which is the totem, does not be a thing. Kind of nice, right? Later on in the dungeon, you'll notice that we are fighting the last boss, and you can actually chicken his totems, which is pretty crazy, right? So he spawns the totems, and I just chicken one of them. So if you're struggling on this boss and you have a chicken available, we just had an extra one right now, you can just use it on that, and it makes the fight pretty trivial. I'm not gonna lie, this is like one of the scarier parts of the fight when these totems are out. You chicken one, and then you just aim the charge at the other, and it's done, right? Like you're just done with that phase. So that's pretty insane. There's the other fight on Wraithtide Vault. If you guys get here, it's the very last boss. I don't know where it is. Very last boss right here, Deathless Katrine. She spawns at the very beginning with 2 cannoneers or whatever their names are, who are kind of scary. Like they have a couple of different casts. You can chicken one of those mobs at the start of the fight. They don't respawn unless you wipe. If you wipe, then you'll just end up with a chicken and the 2 mobs, which is kind of funny. But yeah, when you come into the fight, you can just chicken one of them. Makes it so easy. Definitely don't sleep on them. They're very good. So this is just a general note for players. You basically want to be using your cooldowns on cooldown for the most part. You're going to notice during this boss fight, I actually don't pop my ultimate, but like basically the very first pull afterwards, we do a big pull. and I'm gonna ult it. I think for me it's a little bit different too because I am a tank, so like I do use my ult to survive in a lot of situations. So not having my ult for a pull like this basically can be very scary. So basically, for any players who are DPSing, you kind of want to use your abilities on cooldown, just because the more times that you can use them, the more value you're going to get out of them. Obviously, if you're sitting on an ability, especially if it has like a 45-second to a minute cooldown in some of these dungeons, like especially in a shorter dungeon where there's only like 12 minutes, right? If you're missing out on a cast of that, then you're kind of just like wasting it. You definitely just want to be using them on cooldown. It doesn't really matter if the pull's massive or like not super big. If the tank's pulling like kind of weirdly, you kind of just want to be able to get value out of it and use. So this is something that you'll learn a lot if you have done any Mythic Plus in World of Warcraft. Basically, like anytime that you're sitting on cooldowns, it just feels really, really bad. It's better to use it on a small pack and just get through that pack so that you can get onto like the other packs than it is to just sit there waiting for the perfect opportunity to use your ability, because oftentimes that perfect opportunity just won't come. So you're going to notice basically whenever I'm going through here, I'm just going to be popping all of my stuff as it comes up. Especially my Grand Melee is going to be like a big example of this. Is like whenever my Grand Melee is up, I kind of just try to do a big pull and like group everything up. So right here, I'm probably going to pop it. I get everything in. And then I'm probably just going to pop Grand Melee here in a second. This one's a little bit more like I kind of time it because I want to time it with the casts and stuff. So I don't really need to use it on the Flame Breath side there, but right now you notice I'm popping it. As you kind of get into like a few seconds into the pull, that's when things start to like cast stuff. So if you're thinking of an ability like Grand Melee, or other stops are also very helpful for this. So every character basically has some sort of a stop. So I know that on Mako she has two. She has two. She has one Cyclone or something, and then she has like a AOE stun that she can do. With Helena, you have your Grand Melee, which is super valuable. You also have your charge. That's also a stop. Something that I didn't realize for a while playing Helena. And then I know that with Alarian, you have your little pull. I know that on what's his dude, the snap guy, or Artius or whatever. He can like, I'm pretty sure he can push people back, right? I've played Tariq. He can do an AOE Fear. That's probably one of the worst ones, but that one can be really valuable for your tanks. It is a good stop. It's just annoying because it'll like send everything like running all over the place. But if your tank is in trouble, that is like one of the best buttons in the game as a DPS to like save your tank's ass. Like if your tank is ever just like taking a ton of damage and you press your fear, instantly every single tank probably notices this. They just stop taking damage because everything's feared. It's kind of crazy. You'll be getting like meleeed and suddenly your DPS saves your life. So yeah, stuff like that can be super nice. Definitely take advantage of them and use them pretty frequently. Like you can get more value out of them. You can get more stops. There's no sense of waiting on them for the perfect moment to get some value out of it and move on. All right, the next one I want to talk about is using focus markers. If you guys don't have this set up, you definitely should. I think that it's already default set up, but there's actually you can set your trigger interrupt target. I think that this is something that is not set up by default. That is very, 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 very helpful. You can also do the mouse over interrupt target, which is a little nice because then that'll just make it so if you mouse over and you try to kick somebody, you can do that. I probably should have this on, but I don't right now. But basically, the trigger interrupt target basically means that if I set my interrupt target to somebody pressing V, now, when I press Shift F, what it's going to do is it's going to kick that target. So this is really nice, especially on somebody like Helena, for example. And the reason for that is because I can target one person and I can kick another. So this can end up playing out in some really good ways. So setting an interrupt target can be really nice for situations like this, where you notice I am watching the Sentinel right here, but I can now target the Scholar and I can DPS the Scholar down because the Scholar is more of a priority target than the Sentinel. The Sentinels are annoying, but like if you get the kick, there's like they're not doing anything. Scholars will they'll drop these orbs that'll follow people around. They have this rune of detonation that'll do a lot of damage if you don't kick it, and then you have to kind of kick it early. It'll normally get like a tick off or something, so you know everyone's health just spikes down right there. It's just an insane amount of damage. They really suck. But I can still maintain my kick on this guy. The other thing that this is really nice for Helena is by targeting somebody else and having a focus target, I can actually watch two kicks because my stun or my charge will stun that target and it'll stop their cast. So what I could potentially do in this situation is I could kick the Sentinel, but I could target the Scholar and I could charge the Scholar when he does his rune to cancel it. So it's very valuable because being able to target one person while still watching a kick on another makes things a lot easier. If you're just trying to manually do this, it can be kind of a pain in the butt. So definitely something I recommend setting up. I think it'll make it a massive difference. Finally, something I wanted to talk about was just like good rule of thumbs when you're setting up pulls as a tank. So this might not be super relevant for DPS, but maybe it's a good thing to know for you guys if you guys are watching this. So kind of basically the things that I wanted to talk about are like how I go about kind of crafting my own routes right now. I'm sure eventually like there will just be like the preferred route that people do. I know that Yoda already published a video talking about routes. If you go to Method, they have recommended routes as well. But I think that the game is like fairly intuitive. It seems like for the most part, going through a dungeon as you progress, it kind of becomes like very clear like what packs you are kind of supposed to pull together. And I noticed that like when I compared my routes to like Yoda's routes, for example, I noticed that there weren't too many differences. Like it's not like there's too many options on things that you can pull in. And the reason that I say that is because some packs just aren't meant to be pulled together, right? Basically, the way that you'll kind of craft a route, aside from like chickens and stuff like that, which can make it a little bit more interesting, is that you don't really want to be pulling in too many of one type of mob at the same time. Like each mob faces their own challenges, right? So, for example, in this pack, we have the Acolyte. The Acolytes have a cast that can be kind of deadly. The Hunters drop traps, which can be kind of annoying. Right? They also do like a little AoE, or not AoE, but like a line shot that can do a lot of damage if you're not careful for that. The Husks, however, are kind of just like nothing tank mobs. They kind of just hit you. They don't really do anything else. So like the Husks are very good targets to pull a lot of. When you see the Husks, those are intended to be like pulls where it's just like, oh yeah, those are just a lot of mobs, right? But in this pack, the scary part is the Acolytes. There was also a Reaver in here that we ended up chickening, right? So that's this one right here. This is an empowered Reaver based off of the affix. So that's why I chicken this mob, because he's especially scary. He has more health. He's just going to make this pull a lot more difficult. I'd rather just chicken him and then get like the percentage somewhere else, right? That's what I end up doing in this pack, and it makes this pull a lot easier. It's a pretty large pull, a lot of mobs, right? We're going to get a decent amount of percentage of it, but it's also not going to be like particularly scary, right? We could probably make this pull actually a little bit scarier if we really wanted to, but it's actually pretty fun, right? We get the kicks, and this pack dies, and then we move on to the next pack. Again, let's take a look at this next pack that I'm pulling, right? You notice how we do a lot of double pulls. We're not really taking like any one pack alone, unless it's especially scary or there's nothing that we can chain into it. And if that were the case, then what we would try to do is we would try to craft a better route around that, like, so we don't have to do that, is kind of how we would look about it. So right here, what we have is we have this big guy right here. He does a frontal, and then he also will do an AoE decimate that can be kind of scary. 2 husks, like I said, so these guys don't really do anything. There's a 3rd husk that I'm going to be chaining in, 4th husk. There's a Hunter, and there's a Reaver. So no casters in this pull, actually. This might be something that I would try to like optimize a little bit more if there were like a caster nearby that I could bring in. And ironically, something that I actually do with this pull sometimes, if I have my chicken available, you notice I used another Reaver. Something I like to do is I like to actually chicken this mage, and then I just bring in all these husks. Then we just have a bunch of husks. We have this big dude who's kind of the priority target. Then we have the Reaver. Oftentimes you want to have like some sort of priority target that you can hit. Especially for like DPS, who like if you have like a big cooldown or like a big funnel cooldown. I don't actually know too much about the DPS in this game, but I know that like in Mythic Plus and WoW, there's a lot of characters that have a lot of funnel damage, which means the more people they have to hit, the more damage they'll do to like one target. In cases like that, mobs like this guy are pretty great. They have a lot of health, so it's basically somebody that those DPS can just target, and they'll do a lot of like cleave damage. That'll end up making this guy take a lot more damage that quickly. So. If any of those classes exist, if that sounds like your class, then that's awesome, right? Right here, you'll notice I actually LOS to bring those hunters in, or the hunter, and then yeah, everything comes in. We just group it up. This guy can be a little bit scary if you're not prepared for him. I think he does like a little AOE that can be kind of annoying. It's called Decimate, but it's not too bad. I also have my Grand Melee here in a few seconds, and I can use that to potentially stop it if I'm scared of it. But I think in this pull particularly, this one's not too scary. Again, this is just a standard double pull, and that's how I think a good way, if you're looking to like just try the game out, just like pull 2 packs at a time and see what does what, and like try to judge it based off of that. Try not to do too many casters. Casters generally will get pretty scary in a pull, but for the most part, something like this, you know, it's like one of a couple of different mobs, 1 hunter, 1 reaver, 1 of these guys, and then like a couple of husks. Not a problem at all. We end up taking that down. So this is like we talked about, sometimes like pulls can get inefficient if they're in like a weird spot. So I don't really like this particular patrol. I haven't really found like a great way to work it in, but this is how I've been doing it. Basically when this patrol comes in, I'll actually run over here and I will chain it to these guys down here. So there's another patrol down here. This one has a Reaver, and then there's this guy. If you catch it at a good time, you can catch it where this patrol's not here, and then you can just get the big guy in. I forget his name, Gravebreaker or whatever. But sometimes you'll end up getting both. And I think that like depending on like your group and how comfortable you guys feel, you can totally take both if you want to. But it really depends on like if you guys have cooldowns and stuff like that. So Notice right here, I actually do like some crazy snap tech. I don't even intend to do this. I kind of just like figured this out on accident. I don't know how to replicate it yet, so I'm not really going to talk about it too much, but you'll notice I think that this actually snapped these guys here. It might be something usable. But yeah, we get this pull together, we end up killing these guys, and then we move on to the next group. Right? And again, we're doing the same thing, right? Okay, we have a patrol here. We're going to chain them into some acolytes, and I think I chicken this one in a second, and then, yeah, it's like a double pull, right? And we basically just double pull our way through the dungeon. I think this pull is actually kind of crazy. I probably wouldn't recommend this. But we get these greed spawns in here. I even pull some plants, and we end up just like AoEing them all down. Our Alarian is doing like an insane amount of. The greed spawns also they AoE the enemies, so you notice they have like the stacking debuff for your like 6 stacks. So this ends up killing a lot of them. 8 stacks, it stacks up really high. Afterwards, I silence all of them and it ends up working out. I would not recommend that pull, but it's just so I think that it shows cases that I'm not just trying to do one pull at a time. Oftentimes, I'm trying to combine 1 or 2 pulls of a bunch of different mobs that do different things, but that are all manageable within themselves, right? So this guy is a caster. This guy does like group damage. This guy just melees the tank. Ideally, these mobs that melee the tank are really good to chain. Because that means that I am the only one that has to deal with them, and they're not really doing anything else to the group. As long as I can live, they will die. Sort of logic, right? Keep in mind, being able to use your utility to like cancel stuff also makes these pulls a lot more manageable. So like right here, for example, we do this like crazy big pull. You notice how scary this looks? It's like all these circles and stuff. This looks like an instant wipe. But what ends up happening is our Alarian actually groups everything up. So he's going to do this like AoE like pull here. This is after everything got all these debuffs too, so there's actually 3 greed spawns in here. And immediately after our Alarian does that, what I do is I group silence here. So it's like, although we have a lot of mobs that could potentially be scary together, because they are all silenced like this, we are actually able to kill this pack before it becomes a problem. So yeah, use your utility to kind of like make that possible. There's a lot of mobs too, where if you cancel their cast, they won't recast it, which is really nice. So for example, if we go back to Everdawn, go to this Everdawn, you'll notice this totemic actually, when I silence him, so normally this totemic is going to drop a totem, right? That's kind of like his bit. That's what he does, right? Because I silenced him with my grand melee, he's not going to cast this totem, and because he would have normally casted the totem around the time that I use that grand melee, he actually just doesn't cast it at all. He just dies. So, yeah, like canceling an ability, or like messing with the mob when he was going to cast it, it just makes it so he doesn't cast it at all, which can be really nice. These Horned Seers, if we were like to pull them in, they would stop casting for a second. Yeah. So I don't know if that ends up happening with this Orb of Blood or anything. Yeah, I think another good example of this is in Sithral's Fall right here, right? These blades are really scary, the blades of Sithral. But if you use a stop on them, it makes them a lot more manageable. So for example, right here, I'm going to do this pull. We have the 2 blades of Sithral, and we have a Sentinel in here. That's basically the whole pull. But again, this is a pull that we probably could make scarier if we had like cooldowns and stuff, but I think this was our first time in here, so the slicing blades are going out, so you notice how I silence to cancel them, and then they just won't recast them for a while. It doesn't need to be a silence, it can be a charge, but just because I'm playing Helena, that's like the best example that I have. Do I use my charge on one of them here? Yeah, so he's doing the slicing blade right there, and I'm going to charge him, and then he stops casting it, and you know, see that like he's not going to recast it because he was already here to cast it, right? So it's just a nice little touch. Other than that, I hope this was helpful for you guys. I hope you learned something. If it was helpful and you guys want to catch me out on stream, I've been streaming a little bit of Fellowship, having a good time with it, so feel free to check that out with the link below. And other than that, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.